Welcome to another installment of Biology from Jay's House. Today we are going to continue talking about the circulatory system. And before we get into class proper, I want to do a quick review of the circulatory system. So we are talking about the circulatory system. And remember, it delivers three things to all the cells in your body. One thing it delivers is water. Another thing it delivers is nutrients. And the last thing it delivers is oxygen, which we get from the air. Now, what I really want to emphasize is that those three things, the blood carries it absolutely everywhere. So I like to think of the circulatory system as the post office of the human body, meaning that I can randomly choose any home in this entire world, and if I write the address down of that specific home and I pay enough money to get it there, I can send a letter to anywhere on this planet that is a fully functioning home, right? And that's what the post office does. So the circulatory system, what it does is it ships water, nutrients, and oxygen to every home or every cell in your body. And it doesn't necessarily go every moment of every day because cells don't need this stuff every moment of every day. Remember, we can go 3 minutes without oxygen, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without nutrients. So it's probably not dropping nutrients off every moment of every day to every cell. Just like the postman doesn't necessarily have to come to your house every day, like it doesn't come on Sundays, right? So the circulatory system, if you think of it as the post office, as the postal system of the body, delivering these to every cell in your body, just as the post office or the postal system delivers mail to every home in the world, then you have a really good idea of what the circulatory system is all about. Okay, that was the quick review. Now let's get into today's class. So I didn't collect homework because there was homework that I could physically collect. I didn't go over homework because these are pre-recorded videos. But I know what you guys are thinking. Jay sure talks a lot, but I hope you yelled, "What's the point?" because that's kind of fun. Okay, let's see. Let's write down the date. And you should be watching this on 4/20/20. There you go. And then we skip a line, go all the way left, and we write the point. And hopefully you are writing this also. Oh, I'll write a little bit bigger. What is the point of today? What role do the 4 parts of blood play in your body? Does anybody know? I'm just kidding. I can't call on you because this is pre-recorded. It's kind of fun to play with that. Okay, so we need to know one thing. We need to take one note, and that is blood. What the heck is blood anyway? So let's take a quick note. Hopefully you're typing this into some sort of document, your circulatory system notes. And what is blood? Well, blood is a tissue. Wait, what? We'll get to that in just a second. That contains red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, Platelets, and plasma, Plasma. Okay, so now's a good time to pause the video and put that in your nose. So pause, and welcome back. Okay, so the 4 parts of blood. Okay, so first thing I noticed is there's 4 things listed in blood. I noticed that there's red blood cells listed in blood. I noticed that there's white blood cells listed in blood. I noticed that there's platelets listed in blood. And I noticed that there's plasma listed in blood. So those must be the 4 parts of blood. Okay, so we have to find out about those and what each one does. But I want to just take a minute and talk about tissue. So tissue is just a weird term in biology. It basically is any group of cells that work together to do a thing. So and since blood has all these cells in it and they are working together to do a thing, they're considered a tissue, even though tissue sounds like something physical that you can like pick up and you could like hand somebody, here's a tissue, right? You can't do that with blood. You can't like pick blood up and carry it around. I mean, if you put it in your hands, it would kind of pour everywhere. So, but it fulfills the definition of tissue because it is a group of cells, red blood cells, white blood cells, and these are like cell bits that work together to a single cause. So blood is a tissue, even though it's not solid. It is liquid, but it's a liquid with a bunch of solids in it. So there it is. It's kind of weird to call it tissue, but worth addressing. So today what we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about red blood cells. We're going to talk about white blood cells. We're going to talk about platelets. We're going to talk about plasma. And we're going to talk about why they're in the body. So these notes right here are the only notes that you absolutely need in your notes. I will write the answer to the point later in this video. Now I'm going to put optional notes in throughout the video, but you don't need to write those. So I'll write them not in black. You do need blood. This needs to be in and that needs to be in too. Okay, so I'm going to leave the point up there for now. I might need that space later on in the video, but I'll leave it up there for now. And let's just go in order. The first thing that I saw red blood cells. So what I've done is I've printed out these cute little pictures. Look at that, red blood cells. I wonder what red blood cells do. What does that little thing say? Well, let me put it down there. Here's an optional note about red blood cells. Red blood cells. Again, this is optional. It doesn't have to be in your notes, but feel free to be a good student and write it anyways. They are round, disc-shaped, cells that carry, just barely got that word in there, oxygen to all the body's cells. So what does it do? It carries oxygen. So this is the big thing. Red blood cells carry oxygen. Now, in some sense, that sounds really easy. Oxygen's super light. Look, I'm carrying oxygen right now, and I don't even feel it. But that's also why it's difficult to do, because it's a gas. How do you I can't like grab some oxygen, put it in my pocket, and then, if I'm drowning, just kind of pull it out and go, thank you. Really glad I grabbed that handful of oxygen earlier, right? It's a gas. It's really hard to grab onto. So this job of red blood cells carrying oxygen is actually really unique. And the reason it's unique is because it grabs onto a gas. We can't grab onto gases, but these cells can. And what they do is they use things, so I'm going to scooch this down just a smidge. What they do is they use a thing called hemoglobin. Now, do you need to know hemoglobin? No, you don't need to know hemoglobin, but it's worth pointing out that hemoglobin, again, optional note, is a protein. Hey, we know how proteins are made. Oh yeah, DNA, ribosomes, all that good stuff. Is a protein that bonds to oxygen. That bonds, that's a typo. That bonds oxygen to red blood cells. So the cells themselves actually can't hold on to oxygen, just as my skin cells can't hold on to oxygen. My skin is made of skin cells, and I can't hold on to it. So what they need is they need a middleman. Much like how the tendon connects muscle to bone, because muscle and bone can't grab each other, hemoglobin is the middleman between red blood cells and oxygen. And for all the nerds out there, hemoglobin actually has a whole bunch of iron in it, which is why when red blood cells carry a lot of oxygen, the hemoglobin turns red because it's actually rusty iron. I mean, that's what, when iron rusts, it is iron meeting oxygen. So your blood turns more red. Red blood cells turn more red when they're full of oxygen because of the iron in hemoglobin. Ding! So what do red blood cells do? They carry oxygen, O2, from the air all around the body. Okay, so I'm going to start covering up the point with these little pictures, and I'm just going to leave them up there. So red blood cells, check. On to the next thing. Let's see, if I look back at my definition of blood, it said something about red blood cells, white blood cells. Ooh. Okay, so what do white blood cells do? Well, here's my cute little picture. That's Jay on the nights and weekends. Just kidding. Okay, so looking at that, I wonder what white blood cells do. Well, let's take yet another optional note. White blood cells, again, optional note, you do not have to write this, are large cells. They're huge. They're like some of the largest cells in your body that defend the body against both infectious disease and foreign particles. Foreign materials. Did I sneak it in there? Ooh, just barely. There's buried. Can't see it just off the board. So white blood cells are large cells that defend the body. There we go. Defend the body. That's a terrible D. Let's make that a little more pretty. So there you go. What you're supposed to see with this picture is you're supposed to see this person is keeping us safe. Look at that, from things that might harm the country. All right. So defend the body. They are defending the body against two things. One is infectious disease. So that's things like COVID-19 and, common cold and other stuff that gets you sick or hurts you. And that's kind of the obvious one. What happens is white blood cells, they just go around your body and they go door to door with the cells, and they just knock on the front door and basically ask, hey, are you supposed to be here? Do you know the special code for this body? And every cell in your body knows the code. So if it goes to your brain cells, your brain cell says the code. If it goes to your liver cell says the code. If it goes to your bone cell says the code. But if it goes to a cell that's been infected with, let's say, COVID-19, then the cell has forgotten the code because it's been taken over with a virus. So then your white blood cells go, oh, you don't know the code, and it eats it. It literally will envelop the entire infected cell, and then a bunch of stuff happens. We'll talk about that when we get to the immune system, but that's basically what white blood cells do. Their main job is to go door to door asking, do you belong in this body? Do you know the code? And if cells are healthy, they know the code and they're fine. If cells have been infected, they don't know the code, they've forgotten the code, and white blood cells will eat them. Yay! And just a quick thing about foreign materials. Foreign materials doesn't mean it comes from France, speaks French, not that sort of foreign materials. Foreign materials mean things that aren't supposed to be in the body, such as, let's say that you accidentally step on a nail. Ow! That nail is a foreign material. You weren't born with that nail in your body. It's not part of you. So it's a foreign material, and white blood cells will also help with that, dealing with things that are in your body that shouldn't be. So whether it's like, something you accidentally ate and shouldn't have, or something that punctures the skin and gets in there that way. So it also fights foreign materials. Okay, so I consider white blood cells done. They also help the body. Red blood cells carry oxygen. White blood cells help fight disease and foreign materials. Okay, so let's just keep chugging along. Okay, let me look at the definition of blood, a tissue that contains red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets. Platelets. I wonder what platelets are about. Well, there's that little thing. Oh, it says the word patches. Patches? Hey, don't patches patch holes? Ah, that seems like a thing. Okay, let's take a looky-loo. Again, an optional note. You do not have to write this, but you're more than welcome to. Platelets. Oh, sorry. Platelet. Singular. A cell fragment. It's not a full cell. That makes blood clot. That is not clearly written. Let's try that again. Clot. It's a cell fragment. So the crazy thing is platelets are originally whole cells. They reproduce just like cells. They make proteins just like cells and all that. But when they get ready to jump into the bloodstream and do their job, they actually jettison. That means like get rid of things like their nucleus and stuff like that. And they're just parts of cells. They become just a cluster of non-living chemicals. So it's actually a cell fragment. It is born just as a normal cell, like every other cell in your body. But when it gets ready to jump into the bloodstream and do its job, it actually throws its nucleus and other bits away because it doesn't need it to do its job. It's actually all through chemical reactions. It doesn't have to think. It just has to kind of react to its environment. So, neat thing about platelets. Okay, so why would we need patches? And I have some duct tape there. Why would we need patches in our blood? That seems odd. Well, let's say that this is your arm. And that's the skin. And we know that the first layer of your arm is exactly that, it's skin. And somewhere in your skin is going to be blood. And let's say you're walking along and you step on a nail. Ouch! Well, just out of sheer reaction, what do? You pull that nail right out. And what happens when you pull that nail out? Let's see. I believe you get what's called bleeding. The blood runs out. This is usually where you start screaming or fainting or just being overall bummed. And here's the thing, if you didn't do anything about it, if you didn't have any way to block the blood, you would just bleed forever, right? Until these cells get around, until the skin cells here and the skin cells here get around to making new cells. You would just bleed forever. So what happens is you have these patches, you have these platelets in your blood, and what the platelets do is they do exactly that. They flow in the blood and then they patch the hole. And then this blood, as you know, if you've ever seen blood, this blood will end up hardening into a scab, right? But the first thing you have to do is you have to stop the blood from coming out. So that's what the platelets do. They patch any holes. And this idea of patching holes is called a blood clot. When blood clots, it patches holes. For the nerds out there, if you struggle with this, if you have a low platelet count and your platelets don't work very well, you are called a hemophiliac. And any cuts become a little worrisome because you're not really good at making these patches. So platelets, those clog holes. Okay, and now looking back at the blood definition, the last thing I see plasma. Plasma. It's the liquid portion of blood. If I look back, I see red blood cells are, well, cells. They're things. They're solid. White blood cells are, well, cells. They're solid. I can pick them up. Platelets are cell fragments. They're solid. I can pick them up. So we have a solid and a solid and a solid. So how do we get it to flow? Well, use a lot of liquid. Plasma is what makes blood flow. Now we're going to talk about why it says water and there's pictures of nutrients or food there. But the first and foremost thing is it is the liquid. It is how you get people to go down water slides. How do you get people who are solid, like red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets, to go down a water slide? You use a lot of water. So plasma is the liquid portion of blood. Let's write another optional note. You do not have to write this. So plasma is a straw-colored, straw meaning like hay, so it's like a light tan, fluid. Oh, hey, it's the liquid part of blood that contains water and nutrients. There's three things that we need to stay alive. Oxygen, which the red blood cells carry, water and nutrients, which are in the plasma. So plasma actually does two jobs. One is it keeps everything flowing. It's the only liquid portion of blood. It keeps these solid things flowing through all your veins and arteries and capillaries. All right? Without this, it would be like you going down a water slide without water. Just it wouldn't happen.